Okay, let's keep the conversation going with some folks who work with our high school athletes. I'll do some introductions here quickly. Harvey Richards, we heard your organization mentioned earlier, MISHA, but it is the Missouri State High School Activities Association. Also with us, Allison Donjon, with a trainer with Pro Rehab. You're currently working over at Marquette High School. And Anthony Tony Breitbach, you train trainers. You're a longtime trainer, correct?
Yep.
At Twitter, they're taking us to task. Bring this conversation back. Don't forget, this is about our young women as well. Daughter plays softball?
Yes. And she's had a concussion.
She's had a concussion.
And actually, Dr. Bays was her doctor. So.
Did you ever think when you signed her up for softball that concussion could be a concern?
Oh, I mean, I think absolutely. And sports are inherently risky, but there are a lot of benefits for playing sports. I think one of the things is most injuries, when managed appropriately by the appropriately trained person, I think there's a very good chance of total recovery from an injury. I think especially I think one of the most underestimated sports as far as is the ball and the stick sports. I think things like lacrosse, things like baseball, hockey, those kind of things. I think people think field hockey's terrible. I mean, it's really a high risk sport, and I think one of the things that I think I want to correct, I've seen some things on Twitter, is that the helmets are great for preventing facial fractures and skull fractures, but they're really not the key to preventing head injuries. Really, what most of the head injuries really come from the shaking of the brain, not really the physical contact. And I think we're beginning to understand that a lot more than we did in the past.
And do helmets in any sport give a sense of bravado that maybe makes it more dangerous?
Well, I'm sure they do. And I mean, we've even had manufacturers coming out with third-party add-ons saying that they're going to make the helmets more protective, but that's not true. And so we're trying to make sure that we look at that research and everything else. But going to your other numbers, and a lot of this has been about football, but that's also because football has the most participants in that sport. We're in our third year of collecting data on the high schools and junior highs here in the state of Missouri, and football by far has the #1 injuries, but then right behind that is girls soccer, girls basketball, and wrestling. And so by numbers, we have to be looking at all the sports and what's taking place.
And do you see this firsthand when you were at the high schools? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing, as far as girls sports, I'm seeing a lot of concussions in cheerleading, field hockey, definitely.
And the attitudes. When you're going into these schools, how much are you looking for this? Where does this rank in your priority? Is taping the ankle still more important, or is this the top priority? It's
one of the top priorities for me. If anyone's having any concussion symptoms, I make sure that I look at them right away and make sure they get pulled for the day from that sport, because it's too risky to let them keep going, and I want them to be as safe as possible.
How much of the culture is changing from, we were just watching the piece there, and we commented, there was a saying, rub some dirt on it, like the coach talked about, get back in there. How much has that really changed, and does it need to?
I think it's changed tremendously. You got your bell rung, this has occurred or whatever. Like I said, we're in our third year of collecting data now, and what we've found is a direct correlation to the number of people that have been taken out of the contest or out of practice because of signs and symptoms of a concussion. This year, almost 2,600 athletes in the state of Missouri under our umbrella, and what was correlated to that was they missed almost 300,000 days of practice and/or contests. That is a great correlation of that they're getting diagnosed, they're given that time off, they're getting time to recovery, and then coming back into the sport. So I think there's been a big improvement.
Yeah.
Are you all concerned that there are going to be these second concussions that may be a little more serious?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we really try to protect against, and I think the two big trends that have been happening probably in the last 20 years is, number one, we have a better understanding of how to treat concussions and what concussions are. I think in the old days it was you were either knocked out or not, and you were out for a certain period of time. Now we really use exertional type guidelines for returning. So they not only have to be held out of activity, they need to be symptom free, and then we need to gradually build their exertion up so that their symptoms don't return. Before, okay, doctor says I'm out for a week, boom, I may have a headache, but I'll still go back and play. Nowadays, it's you better be symptom free before we even think about putting you back in. And that's when we have athletic trainers at schools. What scares me, the other trend, is that the club sports are really taking off like crazy. there are these club sport coaches that really are viewed as experts by the parents when they have very little training, they have very little support from a medical team, and maybe some students that play multiple sports are doing a soccer practice and a softball practice in the same day. And they may have gotten a concussion in soccer, but the softball coach doesn't know about it, and they're at softball practice. So I think that is the next frontier. I think with athletic trainers at schools, I think we're making good inroads at the school sport level, but I think the big frontier ahead of us as far as youth sports injuries is really how do we take care of these club sports athletes, because it's becoming more organized, it's becoming more serious, and there's really a lot of people that aren't very well trained to take care of them.
More responsibility on those clubs.
Yeah.